Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Are you ready? Let's go do this. Hey, Karan, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. I am so excited to have this conversation with you. So, why don't we just jump right in? And I know you're a coach. I know you've done real estate and I know you have been seeking financial freedom. So, share your story. Let's start there.
Yeah, so not to take up too much of time, but here's the background, right? I've been in coaching now I've been coaching for about 3.5 years, but I've been coaching along with a W-2 job, right? So I've had a W-2 job all this while, but my last day at the W-2 job was December 31st, 2023, right? The whole My coaching is centered around people investing in real estate and achieving what we call the five freedoms. When I say five freedoms, we don't just talk about financial freedom. Everyone automatically talks about financial freedom, but we're talking about more than that. We talk about financial, but in addition to that, we talk about time freedom, location freedom, relational freedom, and impact freedom, right? So while we typically believe that financial freedom is the key to the outcomes where the life we want, the fulfillment we're looking for, most people forget that when they make the money, they're basically essentially giving up the rest of their life, right? They're basically making $1 million a year, but they're spending all their time at work doing something different, managing a portfolio of real estate. So they're giving up other freedoms to achieve the financial freedom. Now, when we talk about achieving multiple freedoms, we actually categorize other freedoms above financial freedom. So I'll give you an example. I just came back from a 10-day retreat, right? Where I was completely disconnected from technology. I was able to run a portfolio of about 25 short term rentals while I was gone. No phone, nothing. It was a silent meditation retreat that I did for 10 days, right?
Wow.
And the business continued to run. My team took the business and ran it. And literally, we do short term rentals, right? That's our focus, vacation rentals and short term rentals. And in the 10 days that I was gone, we booked over $100,000.
Wow.
So that's the kind of freedom we're talking about. Just because I become an investor in short term rentals or an investor in vacation rentals or in multifamily, to make money, to get that financial freedom, to quit my W-2 job, doesn't mean I want to give up the freedom of time. Doesn't mean I want to give up the freedom of location, take location. So last year, we traveled in the summer as a family. My family and myself, we love to travel. So we traveled to India, Cambodia, Thailand, and Indonesia for 5 weeks, right? Again, I may have worked maybe 10 to 15 hours in those 5 weeks total, right? And all while even doing a rehab and getting a new property in service. In December, again, we went down to South America. We did a hike in Peru, the Machu Picchu Trail, and we did Argentina and Chile, Patagonia, total about 3 to 3.5 weeks, right? So this is, we're talking about location freedom, time freedom. Relational freedom, I wake up this morning and I say, hey, what am I going to do today? I want to spend my time, working with Sue or speaking with Jack or Mary, and I don't need to go and deal with someone I don't want to just for a paycheck, right? It's
Yeah.
all relational freedom. Who do I want to develop these relationships with? Who are these people that I actually care for? Who do I want to surround myself with to elevate my life, right?
Mhm.
And when you talk about impact freedom, what is the impact I'm going to create on people around me? So our coaching program, one of the things that I found is that I got more fulfillment from seeing all the people who I surround myself with. I've got about 40 clients, like I said, typically high income professionals who have very hectic jobs, but making, high six figures, right? $500,000 a year. Typically, they're doctors and other professionals who are making a lot of money.
Mm.
And what I found fulfillment is that I know that in the last 3.5 years, I've been able to coach about 40 people. They've bought about $45 million in real estate, and they've been able to truly generate wealth based on that. That's why I said, let me take
Wow.
this mainstream. We're launching our program officially in April. It's called Vacation Rental Mastery Unlock Your Freedom. I'm impacting the lives. So take, for example, the 40 people I coached, right?
Yeah.
they have families, they have a wife and a kid, whatever. There's 4 people impacted for everyone I coached, right? So it's 160 people I was able to impact. Now, so I'll give you an example. I'm speaking with a gentleman from what we call the Second U Foundation, right? He's basically a foundation that's set up for to help enable people who are previously incarcerated come back and become a meaningful part of society, to become productive members of society, to get integrated back into the community after being, 5, 10, 15 years in prison, right?
Hmm.
So one of the things we're going to be doing is working with them to offer them some sort of coaching and programs where they can invest in real estate and truly build wealth. They deserve to do this. They've served a sentence. They've come out. Everyone deserves a second chance, right? So
Hmm.
this is the impact freedom we're talking about. You need the financial freedom to achieve the rest of the freedoms. Without the money, without making the money, you can't go, change locations. You can't disappear. You can't invest in a team. You can't do all the stuff. You can't make the impact you want. So
Hmm.
that's what we're all about.
Thanks for sharing all of that. I want to take a couple of pieces out of that you were talking about. The first was about coaching, how people don't realize that when you coach somebody, it has a almost like either domino effect or fractal effect. Like you don't just coach that person; they indirectly pass on what they're learning to their spouse, to their kids, and then that has generational impact that we forget about. You forget. You think, oh, you're just coaching one person. It's really not. You're coaching a bunch of people. The other thing I was curious on, you talked about your W-2. Were you building all of this up and coaching people while doing your W-2? And what was your W-2?
So W2, I was part of a startup. I worked there for about 12 years. We sold that business about 3.5 years ago.
Okay.
And I essentially took all the capital from there and I started buying my real estate, right? So I started building my portfolio. What happened was when we bought this real estate and we got successful, people around looked at it and said, I want to do what you're doing. Can you teach me how?
Ah,
Right?
gotcha.
So
Yeah, I
that's
was
how
going to
the
ask you
business
how you
started.
fell into coaching.
No, no, that's really what it was. Because
Yeah.
I was really happy about the success. I shared it with people around me, shared it with the community. I was asked to, become a coach. I was asked, people said, "Hey, can you coach us?" And the word got around. You never really advertised the coaching service ever. It's all been word of mouth, and it's going one after the other. I love the fact that along the way I coached these people. They were successful. I made friends. They're a community that I can depend on all day long, right? And
Hmm.
and this got bigger and bigger. I actually had to stop coaching in 2023 because there was just way too much going on. I was always on a plan that what, I'm going to quit my full-time job at the end of December 2023 and go into this full time. So I was building up towards it. So that's really
Okay.
how it happened. Now, like I said, we've formalized the program. We've formalized multiple offerings within it, from self-paced coaching, self-paced courses, to full-on, hands-on, one-on-one executive level coaching.
Hmm. Oh, okay. So the W-2, it was still in the startup then as of 2023. Or you said
No,
you
no,
sold
no.
this
In,
out.
in
It was different
2023, we'd already
W-2.
no 2023 we'd already grown that business quite a bit. We sold that business. It was about
Gotcha.
130 people, but again, still pretty big responsibility there. I gave
Gotcha.
up a pretty high W2 job, making over $500,000 a year to come and do
Yeah.
what I'm doing.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. You just kind of, you know what? I talk to a lot of coaches, and the common thread for a number of them is, yeah, I didn't anticipate to turn into a coach, but I
Yeah.
just had people start asking me to coach them, and then they fell into it. And, they say when the student is ready, the master, the teacher will appear. And you did that for people, and then they just kept coming to you because obviously you were helping them, and they were seeing results. So it's a true mark of a coach, and being able to coach somebody and then allowing, just kind of releasing them and allowing them to go and do what they want to do. I think that's really cool. We had talked previously off camera about you use different types of techniques in your coaching. So I would love to get into the mindset weeds about how you coach people, what some of the techniques are that you use, and what makes you different than, say, other coaches that would be out there.
So there's a couple of things, right? I always tell people, while everyone thinks that this whole real estate, especially vacation rentals, which are officially considered to be higher risk than multifamily and stuff like that, But I also believe a much better vehicle to truly grow and generate generational wealth because their cash flows are way higher. And if done right, you can really do a good job, right?
Mm,
So a big part of coaching in this space is mindset. Okay. From a mindset perspective, there is less certainty. So let's say you have a multifamily that you want to buy. You can generally predict what the rents are going to be. There's a historical rent roll. You know what the market rents are going to be within a 50 to 100 bucks. You know that that unit's going to produce 850 bucks a month or 1,000 bucks a month or whatever it is. In short-term rentals, you could have a unit right next door that's doing $100,000 a year in revenue, and you may still only do 70 or you may do 150. There's so many more variables that go along with it, and being able to predict and being able to truly come up with what that is. There's so many variables that go along with being able to optimize the properties, that it makes a huge difference. And this takes a lot of horsepower. It's a brain game, because it's easy to feel like, hey, I had this guest who came in and he destroyed the set of linen, and it's all stained, and you can sit there and worry about it, right? Or you can say it's cost of doing business. That booking was $2,000. It was a $50 set of sheets.
mm,
Forget it, move on, right? Dust it off, move on. So the ability to truly train yourself to make those pivots, those changes, and to train yourself to not respond or react to
mm,
every positive or negative event. So when you think about it, right, we have positive and negative events. If you spend too much time cheering on the positive event, you're going to miss out something. You have to
mm,
kind of say, hey, yeah, that's a good thing. It's a great thing. I'm grateful for it. I have the gratitude for it, but I still have a lot of work to do. If you get stuck to a negative event, what's going to happen is you're going to essentially oversee the possibility of making up for it somewhere. So this particular space of investing in real estate takes a lot of grit, takes a lot of being able to do difficult things, having a
mm,
thick skin, because you're having so many more people move through your properties. In a
mhm,
year, I don't know how many thousand people move through our properties, right? Things are going to happen. Things are going to break. It's cost of doing
yeah,
business. The other thing that comes in is when people are looking to invest in these short-term rentals, because there is no real scientific method, or there are some guidelines and best practices on how you can underwrite the property and how you can truly measure what that property is able to do. Generally, you'll be within a mark, but that margin of error could be plus or minus 20%, which is pretty big, right?
yeah,
So it takes a little more decision making and analytical mindset to truly say, I am going to be able to make this decision with a higher level of insecurity, with a higher level of doubt in my mind, and still make that happen, still take action, right? I'm
right,
not letting this uncertainty on what that pro forma for the property looks like. The degree of uncertainty is higher in the space we're in. So it takes that ability to truly change that mindset, and pull the trigger, to take action, to move forward, right?
mm,
The only
yeah.
person who loses in this thing is one who does nothing, right? You
Yeah,
have to
that's
take
true.
action.
Yeah, you have to do something.
Exactly.
Do you find that do you find that the types of clients that you have are more risk, like they like risk more? The opposite is risk averse. So they wouldn't be risk averse, they'd be more risk takers. Is there like, do you find that more, or do you find risk averse people and then you help them with their mindset and overcoming limiting beliefs, or both?
That's usually the case. No, it's usually the case where there are risk averse people who are having that hard time taking action in this space. They know really well at a theoretical level that this is the path to their freedoms. They want it. They want to be able to do it, but they're uncertain, right? That's when they come to us and say, help us do this. We want to be able to achieve these freedoms. But like I mentioned, a lot of my clients happen to be doctors, high income doctors, and doctors have been trained to be risk averse.
Mm,
When you are a doctor, the first rule that you have to follow is do no harm, right? You're in an emergency room. The first thing the doctor says is, I don't know what's going on with this patient, but I got to stop the bleeding. So they're always, it's in their minds their mindset is all risk management. So they're very risk averse. That's the first thing they've been trained to do for decades, right?
Mm.
Now changing that mindset becomes critical. That's typically we come up with, and I found that this is pretty common with other high income professionals we work with as well. That they're typically more risk averse. They're a little more, I'll call it, cautious with their money. So while they're on this trail of slowly building wealth, and yes, over 20 years they're going to make that happen, but they will always keep working hard to make that money. But and I think you and I both know, in order to make those exponential shifts in the status of your life in anything you want to do, whether you want to create generational wealth or you want to create this lifestyle of complete time freedom and location freedom, you're going to have to take massive action to get that response and to get those results.
Yeah,
you
that makes
can't you
sense.
can't build a lifestyle, you can't build a business that's going to give you those location freedoms and relational freedoms by doing it one step at a time. You have to take some drastic action, and that takes the ability to take on a slightly higher risk, calculated risk. We always talk about the past. We know what has happened. We always talk in three time frames. It's the past,
Mhm.
it's the present, and it's the predictable future. Nobody knows the future. You don't know it. I don't know it. I can't say what it is. But the predictable future, which is a calculated analytical future that we know of with a fairly high degree of reasonability, we can predict it. That's what we care about. We don't care about 20 years from now or 10 years from now where you're going to be. We know that in 12 to 18 months where you're going to be, and we've been able to calculate, analyze, and arrive at it. So that's the time frame we work with. So
Yeah.
these are some of the strategies, some of the things that we work with people on. I think the biggest one of them all is decision making when there is a high degree of uncertainty. So that's a big one. That's at the very big start of our program, helping people make those decisions when they're really uncertain.
What's an example? Do you have an example of like something you would say to somebody who's risk adverse? You know, you got a doctor that is trained and that's how their brain goes. What's something that you would say or something you would do to help them overcome that feeling that they have in there that they don't want to take that action?
Yeah, 90% of the people, they come to us, and all I usually have to tell them is my own story, right? Typically, that's enough. And most people, actually, because it's been by reference, most people have come to me because they've seen the story. They've been part of this for the last 2 or 3 years, have seen me doing what I'm doing, and have said, I want to do what he's doing, right? So, one of the first things we know, and I always said this straight with them, especially when people are wanting to do the one on one coaching with me, which is the most premium service, and it's a lot of time I'm spending with them to help change the trajectory of their life. One of the first things I ask them upfront is, are you coachable?
Yeah.
Meaning, do I have to fight you at every step of the way to help you change the way you're going to do things? Right? So, this is, are you coachable? Are you committed? Are you going to be able, are you going to be decisive? There's going to be times when we work on this journey together, you're going to have to make difficult decisions. And as you grow in this process, let's say we work together, and 2 years down the line, the size of your deals have gotten bigger, the velocity of the deals have gotten better, things have gone, the business has grown bigger. You got to remember that the decision you make because of the degree of risk has a bigger stake. There is more at risk as you grow. So are you willing to
Hmm.
be decisive to make those actions, to take those actions, right? So these are some of the things that I ask them up front. And 9 out of 10 times, like I said, they everyone likes to be led by example, right?
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
do believe that
Success leaves clues. Success leaves
absolutely,
clues. Yeah.
and that's really what it's all about. So that's usually how the first conversation goes, and actually it's only after that I say, okay, let's do this, right? So
Yeah.
I have to truly, because if I know if I'm spending time with one person, it's taking time away from someone else, and I want to make sure this person's truly committed to growing and building that wealth. I would rather them say, no, I'm not ready for this, and walk away,
Hmm.
than I take them on, and now we're going
Yeah.
nowhere 6 months from now, a year from now.
Yeah, you asked some great questions. And I had conversations with my coach too. And one of the first things he told me, he says, you think that the client chooses the coach, But really, the coach is also deciding whether or not they choose the client, because if it's not a good fit, you're spending a lot of money, putting a lot in there. And if it's not a good fit, like you said, it's a waste of time, not only for them, but for you as well. And it takes your time away from somebody else that might be more coachable or more in need, of your coaching. So yeah, 100%. Oh, I agree. I agree 100%. Do you find that the end game for the people that you're coaching is to actually leave being a doctor or leave being the high income that they're doing? Or or are they doing this to just build up a portfolio and then continue in what they're doing in
So,
W2?
interesting question. What I like to tell people is I want to make sure they have the choice. You don't want to
That's
work for a
great.
paycheck. You want to work because you want to create the impact in the patient's life. You want to create the impact in the business. You want to be that business owner who's creating impact in that life of your employees, right? So the freedoms we talk about is not like, yeah, you know what, you're going to make $1 million a year and you're going to pack up and you're going to start traveling the world, and that's a location freedom and time freedom. No, that's not what it is. But if you choose to do it, we want to make sure you have the option and you're not in your job because you have to be there. You're not in your desk because you have to be there. It doesn't have to be a have, it has to be a choice. I'll give you a very simple example. My wife and myself, we discuss this all the time. We used to live in New Jersey. We hated the fact that it was cold 8 months in a year. But at the same time, we'll take a ski trip every spring break because that cold has to be a choice. I need to be able to make the choice and say, I'm willing to go feel cold. I'm willing to go ski. I'm willing to go do this, but I want to come back to this. So having that option is what we talk about all the time. These freedoms, while we're focused on getting these freedoms, they're more ideally, it's giving you the choice to do this. And that's what it is. After that, it's your call. Listen, you're making a lot of money, but I still have a lot of clients who say, I don't ever want to quit my job because I love what I'm doing.
Mm,
But I hate this thing that because I'm here, I'm unable to accelerate my growth in other areas. I feel what takes the joy out of my work is the fact that I feel like I have to do it. If I didn't feel like I had to do it, I would have enjoyed my job more. So that's that freedom we talk about, right?
yeah.
It's a mindset versus literally saying, hey, you can go anywhere you want in the world. The mindset of being able to do that. So a lot of people continue to work and they're just way happier. They've achieved these freedoms. They know they can pull the trigger on any one of them anytime they want, and that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love that you talk about all five of those freedoms, because we are so used to hearing about financial freedom, financial freedom, financial freedom. And we forget that there's impact freedom, time
Yeah,
freedom, location freedom, and relationship. And I think the other two, you'll hear the time freedom. Oh, I want to do this. I want to be financially free so that I now have the time to do what I want, and location too. But I think for me, it was interesting to hear impact and relationship on there as
yeah, and
well.
a
You
big part
wouldn't,
of that is, I'll tell you, a big part of that was, let's say there's a time in life when I was making a lot of money, right? And what that led to is ego. If you only focus on making money for yourself, it is going to, regardless of what you say, it's going to go to your head and it's going to boost your ego to a point where you're going to go down a very destructive path, which I did, by the way, right? And I
yeah.
learned from it and I said, the only way to overcome ego is to remember at all times that I am also going to set aside some part of this money, this wealth, this time, my skills, my resources to benefit as many people as I can. If you're going to make $100 million, right? There's no way in the world you don't think you're awesome and you're untouchable, right? So you need to be able to balance that out, that ego that slowly goes up and up and up, and you wouldn't know it. At some point, you got to add in some, sugar or milk to the coffee and kind of bring it back down and say, you know what, I got to like tone it down. When you start doing things for others and see the impact you create, that tempers down your own ego, and it's absolutely critical.
Wow. I love that you talk about ego. So talk about, how did you, like you said, it creeps up, how did you finally come to recognize it? And you mentioned the word destructive path. So
Uh,
now I'm curious, go into there. I want to know more.
well, I'll try to keep this very
It's your podcast. You can do whatever
intentionally.
you want.
I'm going to keep this intentionally vague, right? Let me just say that I almost destroyed my entire life. The
Mm,
way I would call it my life, till I had to wake up and realize, get that wake up call and say, what am I doing?
mhm,
Right? I need to change where my life is headed. I need to change the trajectory of my life. And I'll tell you, in this process, I've had such major shifts in mindset, right?
mm,
I still remember when I was still going through that ego state, someone actually told me, hey, why don't you join this mastermind? Why don't you join this group, coaching thing? I'm like, why the hell do I need to join it? I know exactly what I want. I know exactly what I want. I mean, I'm doing great. I have a target. I know what I want. I'm going to go get it because my ego said, I've been successful. I can do whatever I want.
Is
Until
there
the time that things fell apart a little bit, my life got a little tipsy, and I was kind of forced to go to the Tony Robbins event. Someone said, "Oh, you got to come," and that started this the fall of the dominoes slowly, giving me more awareness of my destructive behavior. And I essentially, in the last literally 18 months, have done have worked in a major way to shift who I am as a person. And part of that, I'll give you an example. So, Tony Robbins events, I'm completely immersed in those. Last year in August, I went to Costa Rica for a week and I did ayahuasca. I don't know if you know what that
mhm,
is. It's plant medicine, Amazonian plant medicine. Amazing shift in my mindset. And again, guys, I'm just a disclaimer here. It worked really well for me. It changed a lot of my life. It's not for everyone, so do your own due diligence there. I don't want to take ownership or responsibility for someone doing it and
right.
not having a good experience. And part of that trajectory of self improvement and constant development, even as a coach, I have a coach, I have a mentor, I have someone who helps me out. I I have people I surround myself with to get better all day long. So I went now for a 10-day silent meditation retreat, and I did not speak a word for 10 days, right? A word. And well, I spoke to the teachers, but that was maybe one sentence a day. And
Oh,
we were
wow.
meditating 9 to 10 hours every day.
Okay, so talk about that. What was your big takeaway from the silent retreat that you did?
So, this silent retreat I did is essentially they teach you to meditate the same way that Gautam Buddha meditated to achieve enlightenment. Okay, it's the same methodology of the process that was 2,500 years ago, right? And they've kept it in its purest form, and they train you to do it. When an essential part of that is to block out all the noise, right? To understand, to see, to truly feel and understand one's own sensations and how your subconscious mind reacts to it or responds to it. So being able to train it to say everything is temporary. It's everything is transitionary. Think about it as you need to start seeing life and saying, I'm sitting at this traffic light and I'm watching the cars go left to right. They're going to come in and they're going to leave. And that's life. Everything you do in life is very temporary, right? So when I say, hey, you know what? I got this beautiful car. I love that car. And then someone comes and scratches it, it ruins my day. I'm like, this is horrible. How could someone key my car, right? Not realizing that the day you bought that car, it already started wearing out, and someday it's going to be a piece of junk. Doesn't matter how nice it is. So you're essentially causing misery in your own life for something that was never meant to be permanent. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Everything is
Yeah.
transitionally. You started dying the day you were born.
Yeah, I've heard it said once that, well, everything is either in a state of repair or decay.
Correct.
Mm, mm,
And there's no, like, I'm not getting younger by the day, right? And it's
right.
so it was my biggest takeaway, this realization that doesn't matter what is, including your own self. And the methodology, the meditation is actually focused on it's inward in your own self,
Hmm.
where they help you connect with yourself internally and truly feel in your body that there is a rise and fall of sensations.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
I'm hurting today, or if I'm feeling excited today, or I'm feeling anxious today, if I'm upset today, it's very temporary. It's coming and it's going to go. So don't put yourself in misery for it. It's all in transition. So it's a very deep process to try and do it. I've never meditated in my life ever, not even for 30 minutes, and this was 9 hours a day, which was kind of insane for me. But I do believe that, if you do this consistently for 8, 10, 20 years, it's going to help you live a much better life. If you build this into your routine, it's going to make a much better life. So yeah, that was my takeaway. Absolutely loved it. Again, as we work with people, and I work on myself, pushing myself to peak performance, these are the things we need. These are the things, the abnormal returns come with abnormal action.
I
You need
love
to do
that.
things that everyone around you is not doing. That's what's going to differentiate you from others. So that's why I work on this stuff all day long. This is what we teach or coach people to do, is to work the way everyone else is not working.
Make a different counterculture. Yeah, I love the idea of meditation and silence. I think, in the culture that we're in now, there's always something going on in the background. There's always some kind of noise going
Yeah.
on there, and it's very difficult to hear what's going on in your own mind when there's all kinds of other things chattering around you. Have you ever read this Surrender Experiment?
No, I
By
haven't.
Michael Singer. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I recommend to everybody, and if anybody's been listening to my podcast for some time now, I'd go into the Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. And there's actually three books he wrote, and I suggest reading them in order. First is Surrender Experiment, then it's The Untethered Soul, and then Living Untethered. And the Surrender Experiment to me sets the backdrop. They say it's the second book, but like I read all three of them in that row and they made a lot more sense reading them that way. Anyway, he talks about his journey that he was in the 60s and he started hearing this voice inside of his head. And he set off on a quest to figure out what that voice was. So the first half of the book talks about his quest to figure out what that voice is, and then everything else he built around it. Fascinating. But what I took away from it was the realization that I can't control everything around me. Where I used to be able to want to control everything around me, and I thought things happened to me, but it shifted my perspective, and I realized things happen for me. And
Yeah.
to allow, rather than trying to orchestrate events to happen, what Singer was talking about in surrendering to them is just letting them come to you as they come to you. And if it's something that you can't control, just allow it to come to you and then make the choice on the reaction. You always have the choice on the reaction, but he even went deeper than that. I know he talked about one experience where he didn't want to teach. He was teaching at the university and he was like, I really don't want to take this class or something. And somebody came to him and said, hey, we want you to teach this class in the fall. And his ego got in there and said, I don't want to do that. But then he surrendered to it. And then the book goes on to talk about all the amazing things that happened because he decided to do that. So I highly recommend that to you. I think you would enjoy it immensely, especially after just coming back from a silent retreat. I think you'd find a lot of depth into it.
I have the Untethered Soul on my list of in my library on Audible to be read.
Okay. All
So
right.
yes, I will certainly look it up and I will read it. Now, what's interesting you bring up is I'm gonna flip that a little bit, which you say let things happen. What really happens, and this happened with me with my first vacation rental I was gonna buy. There was a lot of resistance. We were going through the process, but one thing after the other. There was always something like, you know what, I'm pushing so hard, but I'm unable, it's just not working out. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to find every angle. And sometimes what you really find is that nature has a way of telling you what's not good for you by putting that resistance in front of you and stopping you from actually doing it. So that's kind of the flip side of this, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
is, so I always tell my clients, and so people get they get really emotional about these investments, right? Especially a vacation property. Oh my God, there's a beachfront. This is the one I want. This is what I want to spend. And we try to get on a contract. We're negotiating. We're doing all this. Financing doesn't work out, and I try to help them understand. I said, you know what? You got to learn to understand when to let it go. Maybe it's just not meant to be. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get emotional about it, right? Maybe this is nature's way of trying to help you understand that this one's not for you.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be. to know when
Yeah.
to let go, right? So that's, again, when coming back to that whole coaching thing and how we do things, all of this goes hand in hand with it. But yes, you're right. You gotta let things flow. And again, what's amazing is I've learned a lot of this literally in the last 2 years after my this whole crazy journey I've been through. When you have that ego I was talking about, it's going to stop you from seeing any of this. And this happened in my own life as well, where when the student is ready, the teacher shall appear,
Mhm.
right? This happened in my own life. All of a sudden, when I was ready, things started popping up in my life all day long. I was all of a sudden surrounded by amazing people, a nice community that I belong to. So I'm part of GoBundance, right?
Mhm.
And I all these things started popping up, and they seem to work to help me get better as a human being.
Mhm.
So the ego blocks it and doesn't let you see things. And then when that drops or fades away and you're ready, things start coming to you. So I've learned that you got to let things happen. It's for you. It's not to you, right?
Yeah, it is amazing. What do you do with that ego when it tries to pop through and, get
Not
appear?
anymore. Never again. Because it's been a rough path. Again, it's been a challenging couple years, and it is, I've had to work really hard for it. So I am very certain that is never going to happen again.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, because I hear sometimes, people talk about ego and they're like, I got to suppress it. I can't
Yeah,
work with it. And my coach and I go back and forth all the time on it. And you have that little voice in your head that wants to keep you safe. That's what my
correct.
ego does. It
Yeah,
wants to not let me go do something that is going to be a little afraid. You got that fear in there, but we can talk about fear in a minute, but my ego pops up and it wants to keep me right where I am. And I understand that in order to get to where you want to go, if you want to get to a different place, you've got to work through that. You got to say, thank you, ego. You got me
yeah.
this far, but I've got it from here. Thanks. Um,
What I did find, by the way, what was very interesting on this point of ego, right? The first time you drop that ego, it starts to get progressively weaker, which is great. It's that first barrier you got to break. And after that, the vulnerability sets in, the ability to learn sets in. And the more of that you consume, the more of that you move forward, the faster and the bigger the snowball gets as to how faster that ego gets shattered, which is great. Honestly, we need to always be in that state of mind of gratitude, of being able to take this in. And it's that barrier you're going to break through. But once you break through it, and if you stay open and keep investing in it, it gets bigger and bigger. And there's the chance of you getting back to the state you were in that egoistic time frame is becomes lesser and lesser, because it just starts to pick up momentum. At least that's been my experience for me. It's been a very humbling experience.
what are some of the small steps you took to, drop your ego to get it to silent? Or massive. I hear massive in your story, but then I hear small steps too. So it can go either way on the question.
For me, I generally would categorize things as massive. Like I said, it started with the whole Tony Robbins thing, which, I went all in now. Like this year, we'll do 3 or 4 Tony Robbins events, right? So we do a lot of things. Like I did the ayahuasca, that was massive. The silent meditation, I think, was massive for me. And what I essentially do is it's the massive, and in between the massive, between two massive events, I'm constantly reminding myself and educating myself and improving myself, either through books, through other wisdom, through other things that come up, and reinvesting in myself constantly, talking to other people who know and understand this, who've been there. And honestly, what I believe is really important is that you as a person have to grow exponentially if you want to if you expect or have a mindset of growing all the other parameters in your life, whether it be your money, your relationships. All of these things are depending on your growth more than anything else. You might sit there all day long and hope that, hey, my relationship with XYZ should be better. Why is it not getting better? The only reason it's not getting better is because you're not getting better at it, right?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
you can control your part of it, and as long as you work on improving yourself on in all areas, all these different areas of your life are going to grow exponentially. You have to grow as a person in order to truly grow every single area in your lifetime. And it's been such a mind-blowing experience for me to see that, to feel it, and see that happen.
That's amazing. It sounds like in your story, you've got massive events happening, and then in between, you've got small steps going on. So,
And it goes back to that conversation we had, right? If you think you're at top of the world, your ego takes over.
mm,
The way you humble yourself is you put yourself in a bigger room all day long. When you put yourself in that bigger room, all of a sudden you realize you're not that person who's achieved everything and done everything. And there's guys who are 10x better than you. Now
hmm
you realize you got something to learn. And that keeps you in the right state, in your right lane, and you're going to learn and be humbled and take people's opinion. And it's a win-win thing because you seek their mentorship, they guide you, and you get better as a person. What's wrong with
hmm
that? Right?
yeah, no, it's a win win for everybody.
Yeah.
It makes me think of the houses, where somebody looks at a house and says, oh, I wish I lived in a big house like that. And then you get in the big house and it's like, well, somebody will always have a bigger house than you have. And
So
it circles back around to contentment and gratitude. Being, con-
so interesting you bring that up. I was having a deep conversation with my wife today. This morning, just this morning, we are talking about happiness, right? Like less than 2 hours ago. And we were talking about how happiness is measured. Happiness does not have a scale like, hey, you know what? This desk is measured in feet or inches, or this or weight is measured in pounds. There's no scale for happiness. Hey, I'm 10 pounds happy. That doesn't work, right?
right.
So happiness is always measured in relation to something else. It's a comparative measurement, right? You're comparing it to yourself a few years ago. You're comparing it to someone else you see. You're comparing it to a different situation that someone else is in. But the problem is when you start measuring these things in a comparative manner, you're never going to be happy because there's always someone who seems to be happier than you are. There's always an ideal you're chasing, which will make you more happy. If things were this way, I would have been much happier. Happiness by itself, there is no measurement. So, the normal way people tend to measure happiness is in comparison. And the minute you do that comparison, you open yourself to being exposed, to being unhappy, because there's always someone who seems to be happier than you are. And you forget that you're comparing apples to oranges. What made you
Mhm.
happy 20 years ago doesn't make you happy today. So if you compare your happiness today to what it was 20 years ago, guess what happens? You're not going to be happy, but what you forget is that was apples, this is oranges. Time's different, my needs are different, and my
Right.
happiness is different. I can't compare the two. So if you're able to see today and be grateful for what you have and where you are and what you're doing and feel fulfillment in that, that's happiness.
And I like that you brought up the comparison trap.
Yeah.
And it's so easy. And sometimes you don't even realize you're doing it. If you get on Facebook, I mean, perfect example,
Oh,
and you start scrolling, I mean, it's, it, it's can be very destructive on the
oh,
mind if you let it and you don't realize. You don't even realize, like you're scrolling through. And then we forget sometimes that what we see there may not be the truth, you
what
know?
you see is what they want you to see. Nobody ever says my life is a disaster. Well, some people do,
Some
and
people
that's
do.
doom and gloom, but that's a different thing. But generally speaking, what you see is people's highlight reels, is what it is.
hmm I like that you brought up the happiness thing. And I used to hear the statement, happiness is a bully in the schoolyard.
Yeah.
It'll draw a line for you. And when you think you're happy, it'll erase it in the sand and then it's going to draw it again and draw it again. I think the key to happiness is really contentment and gratitude.
So this is where also again it comes back to our coaching. When I work with these professionals, many times, they're getting a spectacular deal that's in today's day and age, it's great, but they're like, hey, you know what? I want something that's like this, and this was done like 2 years ago. This property we saw was this. I'm like, you can't. You need to understand the reality, the truth of the moment.
hmm
What's your truth as of today? As of today, you can only invest $100,000 to buy a $500,000 property versus 2 years ago you were able to invest a lot more. The truth of today is this is the case. You can't go buy that property. So learn to be content, learn to know what this is. So that all of this stuff that we're talking about, right? The growth, the comparison, the happiness. This goes with that whole coaching we're talking about, right? I use
Mhm.
all of these things as part of my coaching with people when I do the one on one coaching, because it's not, I'm not going to be the one who's going to help them go buy that property. Yes, I will, but they're buying that property because the way they're thinking and feeling about that process changes when we work on this coaching.
Mhm.
So it's them doing it, and I'm just helping them look at things, feel things, and see things differently.
What's some of the challenges that you have? So I like to ask the question, what's something that you thought would be hard about coaching people? Turns out that it wasn't, and then we'll flip it. What's one thing you thought would be easy but wound up being more challenging?
So what I thought was going to be difficult about coaching people was, how am I going to, I'll call it, find credibility? Because I'm essentially coaching people and telling them, this is what I believe you should be doing, right? This is how I believe you should be doing things. And what I find is when I speak with people, you know, the track record in itself speaks for itself, and that's very easy to help them understand these things. So they're understanding these things easier. It's easier to find credibility in this process, right? For coaches, it's a credibility is a big topic, right? And as much as I'd love to be 100% right all the time, I will not be 100% right all the time, but I know that I will have put in as much effort and made that decision for myself if I had to, right? So that I thought was a hard thing, would be really difficult, but it's not. What I thought was going to be easier, but is actually quite difficult, is getting people to truly commit to the process. A lot of people want to do this coaching, they want to get into it, they want to sign up for the program. I hate the fact that, sometimes people don't engage like they should, because I can see it. They know they can. So I can see it because I've done it. I know they can transform their life if only they spend just a little more time focusing on it, right? So people sign up for coaching, and then, every week we talk about accountability, we talk about actions being taken, what's happening, what's not happening, and things don't get done, right?
Mhm.
I can I will never give up on you, right? But you may give up on me because you're like, oh, you know what? Maybe this is too hard, or maybe this is something that you start having your own self doubts. I'll try to talk you out of it. But sometimes people just say, it's just too hard, right? Or I'm unable to get there. And it's like, what I always thought that when people would see that vision of how they can achieve these freedoms, if I'm able to paint that vivid vision for them and show them how to get there, it would be much easier for them to commit to the process and stop doubting themselves. That's
Do
been
you
really hard. It's so hard for people to drop that self doubt and commit and move forward. It's harder than I expected.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what do you think the underlying factor is that there's probably that self-doubt in there, a level of
In
fear?
40 years and 50 years of training, right? Since you're
Yeah.
born,
Yeah.
you're always living in the state of doubt and not sure whether I'm doing things, whether I'm not doing things. You were always told how to do things. There's so many different underlying things that it all resides in the mindset. That's why in
Mhm.
our coaching program, we focus a lot on mindset, because our goal isn't to just help you, buy your properties and stuff like that. That's great. But this transformation we're talking about and the freedoms we're talking about, this is all about getting your mindset to a point which is truly giving you that freedom, right?
Mhm.
The five freedoms combined together should bring you the liberation that you deserve. That's what it is about. And that liberation doesn't reside in a bank account or in the car in your garage. That liberation resides in your mindset.
I love that you said that it's not in the bank account because
Yeah,
when we think of financial freedom and being financially free, it's a number.
exactly.
It's
And that
something that
number will always
they
be meaningless, right? And that number can only get bigger and bigger. So,
yeah. Yeah, and the number's different for everybody because
oh,
what
for sure.
financial freedom means for you in a number is different than what it would be for me, different than for somebody else as well.
Yeah.
Do you struggle with imposter syndrome?
Oh, it happens to me all the time, and I question it, and I feel like, you know what? Sometimes I'm like, do I even deserve to be doing this? I believe it happens to a lot of people. It happens, and it is part of, again, stuff that I'm working on with my coach as well, who's already been here, done that, is bigger than what I'm doing, and is coaching me through how to handle that process and to
What are
know
some
and
small
understand.
steps? Yes, what
Yeah.
are some small steps you're taking for that?
Well, so I'll give you an example, right? When we were
Mhm.
trying to put this coaching program in place, just being honest with you, and one coach to another, right? When we were putting this coaching program in place, the one-on-one coaching, my coach said, this is what I think you should price your program at. You're giving people such tremendous value through this. Their life can change. Do you understand the meaning of that? I'm like, no, I get it. I'm not sure I'm worth that much.
Mm.
And it is just, and he said, remember, we spoke about this, and this is the same conversation, right? You told me you were going to be coachable, and I'm coaching you because I see the value. It's very hard for us to realize our own value at times as coaches. Someone's going to have to tell you or to show you, and you're going to have to believe someone. You're going to have to believe someone. And then when the first one signs and the second one signs up with you and the third one signs up with you, then the proof is in the pudding. Now you start believing it. So that's how
Mhm.
that imposter syndrome, I believe, goes away, is when you have those signs of success and you see the outcome. Now, luckily for me on the coaching front, I've coached about 40 people. That part is okay. 40 people buying $1 million property on an average and being successful at it, in my opinion, is I'll give myself a little pat on the shoulder for that. But it's helped me overcome that a little bit.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
as I scale and grow bigger in this coaching space, it always creeps in when I see, especially when you see the people who are doing things at a scale that's way bigger than you, right? That comparison starts off, and then I have to remind myself all the time that this comparative scale we live in has to be eliminated. And it's
Mhm.
it's literally the concept of reminding yourself constantly, right? That's the only way
Mhm.
till you start to experience it.
Right, right, and
So,
comparing
so
yourself to who you were, not to
right.
somebody else and where
Correct. And
they've been.
wisdom, right? There's intellectual wisdom when someone tells you about it, right?
Yeah.
That wisdom is always going to be something you're going to force yourself to do. Someone's telling you you're worth more than what you are, and you deserve to be this coach you are, right? Because they're seeing it in you. You will only believe them so much, 20%, 30%, whatever it is, till that intellectual wisdom, that's intellectual wisdom, which is where you've read about things and you know and understand theoretically that, yeah, maybe I'm worth it. But once you start to experience it and that intellectual wisdom transcends into becoming experiential wisdom, then you start believing it. Your subconscious mind and your heart starts to believe that, yes, I belong.
Mhm.
And that changes the game all over because that takes off that barrier that's holding you back from being at your peak performance. Those are the things I work on.
Thank you for being vulnerable on that. And so your coach told you, "Hey, I think this is what you should value yourself at." How did you feel when those first one or two people signed up and they actually paid what it is that you had put yourself out there for?
It actually brought a sense of, while it felt good, it actually scared me a little bit when the first one or two did that.
How
All of
so?
a sudden, I felt this accountability. The accountability was so much bigger because they put down this big payment, and it's like, man, they really believe in me. I need to make sure they're successful and their lives are changed bigger than they could ever become, right? I needed to grow and transform their life to a point where they could not even imagine. I had to create that level of impact because by paying the money, right, that one payment or the two payments, it's not going to change my life, right? But what it does, it is a sign or a show of confidence from that student that, you know what, I believe in you and I believe that you're going to help me transform my life. When the student believes that much in the coach's level of accountability to deliver on that skyrockets. And that's how I felt. I'm like, okay, you know what? Now their responsibility to change and transform their life kind of became my accountability now. I need to deliver on that. And it was a little scary, but like I said, As that intellectual wisdom becomes experiential wisdom, it helps you cope with that and grow with that. And it only goes up from there, because once they experience some success, now it's a game changer, because now it's, you're like, absolutely, you know what, I've delivered on this, their lives change, I've impacted so many people and their lives, and yes, I'm worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, my coach and I talk about that often, about the massive responsibility that coaches have for their
Yeah,
clients. And even in like for him being my coach, I signed up with him because I want to go through a transformation. I said to him, "Can you deconstruct me and reconstruct me again?" And he said, "Yes." And he delivered on that, but we talk about it later and he said, "You know, that's a massive responsibility on
yeah,
me to do that, and you have somebody else's life in your hand. It's a much greater responsibility that goes along with it." And I think sometimes clients don't understand what coaches go through. Yeah.
yeah, there's a big responsibility, because it causes every experience, right, every call, every conversation, every experience for that person, right, and I put it in context of our coaching, right, puts in an offer, and the experience he's going to have on it, whether it's positive or negative, actually leaves a permanent mark in their subconscious mind. It's a permanent mark, and if we make mistakes as coaches trying to coach them through that process, such a huge responsibility, right, we can't do that. And that's where that accountability comes in. So people may think, sometimes people sit there and think, you know what, hey, this coaching business is great. There's a lot of pressure that comes with it, right?
Yeah.
There's this pressure to deliver. There's this pressure to. We're literally sitting here talking about changing people's lives through their mindset. Think about what happens if they believe me as much as they say they do, and I work on their mindset, and their mindset changes and goes down the drain. Guess what happens? It is very complicated, and this is why I find the need to have a coach for myself who's at a way higher level, who can help me and help me implement my coaching strategies. It's a cascading effect, right?
Hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. 100%. I mean, my coach has a coach too, and then he coaches
Yeah,
me. And
yeah,
yeah, I mean, it is because you realize that you're in this continual process of growth. When you stop growing, you could start going backwards
absolutely.
too. What are some of the qualities that you see in yourself that make you such an effective coach that you embody?
I've always been able to be a very objective person. I'm able to look at the facts, and I typically work with my mind versus my heart, right? So especially when it comes to things like real estate, we depend on numbers a lot. I make it very clear to my people, anyone I'm coaching, is we have to segregate, we have to separate out investments from lifestyle properties, especially with vacation rentals. People get really emotional. I want that beachfront property at this place, and I'm like, okay, is that going to be your vacation home? If yes, go buy it, even if it doesn't make as much money as we think it will. But if this is truly an investment, you got to segregate it. So I've been able to help people be very objective while analyzing this thing. An investment is different from a lifestyle asset. I can accept a lower return on a lifestyle asset, but if you're looking at this investment as a way to change the trajectory of your life, this is not the investment, right? So being able to keep things very objective, and working with the mind versus the heart in our space, that's absolutely critical, right? The second thing is, and this also helps when people start going down an emotional path with the property, they're thinking from the heart. And it helps me because I balance it out for them. And most things, at least I'm able to convince them, saying, let's sit on it for a week. And you'll find that most people will come out of that emotional state or that heart state over a period of time. That emotion rises and then falls and fades away. And now they're
Hmm.
able to think clearly and objectively. And I'm glad I just told them to hold off and wait for a week, right? So that's been a strength for me. The other thing that I think has become a strength for me, I'll say, in the last couple of years, is the fact that I'm willing to be vulnerable. This ego shift that I've had, this whole change from being egoistic to admitting that I could be wrong, admitting that, you know, yeah, sometimes I need help too. I'm happy to share my story with people, and it brings a level of authenticity. It helps people realize that I'm human. I connect, right? And that allows me to truly work with them, right? Work in bringing and helping them make those shifts in their life to make that change. So these are the couple of things that have been really helpful for me. Obviously, the other things, I've developed a lot of expertise in my field of coaching and my short-term rentals and vacation rental coaching and all that stuff, then building a business around it. So all that stuff has been successful. Those are all the more tangible aspects of things. But the intangibles that I spoke about, I think have been really helpful for me.
Yeah. I as you were explaining all the different things that you were talking about there, I thought of, it's something my coach had said to me. He said, you think I coach you, but you also coach me as well.
A hundred percent.
I'm learning from you. I'm learning to be a better coach in the process of coaching you. So you're teaching me just as much as I'm teaching you. And I hear that theme as a common thread through what you were talking about. And
Absolutely. And if
yeah,
I'm not learning from my mentee, if I'm not learning from a person I'm coaching, sooner or later I'm going to fail in my coaching. It doesn't matter what you say, I'm going to fail because
yeah,
every coach has to continue to grow as well. And
yeah.
actually, that's the best part. The best way to learn something is to teach. I think you know that,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the important thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it ties back into that you're learning at the same time while you're teaching, and you're just
Yeah.
it's kind of like a circle, you know.
Yeah. The only thing that differentiates me from the people I work with 90% of the times is the fact that I have my knowledge and my experience. Like I mentioned, I go back to that, the transcending from the intellectual wisdom to experiential wisdom.
Hmm.
I'm maybe 3 or 5 years ahead of someone else who is not, right? And that experiential wisdom that I've developed by actually doing it and having success has allowed me to think differently and to change my mindset. That's the only thing that sets me apart from my students. And that's all they want because they want to see someone who's done it, been there,
Hmm.
and someone's footsteps who they can follow. And that's why we're a
That's
coach.
all it is. Yeah,
I'm
that's
not
all it
a
is.
teacher, right? I'm a coach.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all
So
it is. I've heard the coach only needs to be 5 or 6 steps ahead of the person they're coaching.
100%.
Yeah, and that person's coming to them because they see that person that has done the thing that they want to do. So,
Yeah.
I
I
love it.
there's people who've come to me for coaching where we started in this thing at the same time. And they've basically come to me for coaching saying, "Hey, we've seen what you did. We started together. We've seen what you've done in the last 4 years. We didn't do as much. We've seen what you did, what you've achieved. Can you coach us because we want to be where you are?"
Hmm.
We didn't
Yeah.
we didn't change our mindset. We didn't do things differently to get to this point, but we've seen your path and we know how you've gotten there. Can you help us? So that's
Yeah.
really what it is. They've
Yeah.
known me from the day when I didn't even have a single vacation rental.
Yeah, you've done
So
a lot of intensive mindset. You've done a lot of work on yourself. So I'm curious if you could go back to your younger self and take a message back in time. What would you tell yourself now?
if I
What would
could
you
take a message back to my younger self,
yes. What would you tell your younger self?
start sooner. Uh, it's taken me, by the time I started going down this path, of improving and mindset work and all this stuff, I was 42 years. What if I'd done this when I was 20? Think about it. Game changer, right? Life changer.
Maybe
The
you weren't
problem
ready
is
at 20.
we weren't ready. Yeah, then
Yeah,
that's the whole
maybe.
part.
Yeah,
You know,
maybe
hey,
you weren't ready. It happened right when it was supposed to happen. What if it happened right? And my coach and I go back and forth all the time because I'm 52 and I'm going through this hero's journey, and I'm going through this also mindset shift and growth coupled with micro movements as well. And he said, maybe it's supposed to happen right now when it was supposed to happen.
hundred
So
percent.
yeah, so the question is a little unfair, but sometimes it's very interesting to see what gets pulled out of people to, to have them answer it. And a lot of times it's going back to something that happened to them when they were younger, and it was out of a regret or out of something that happened. Said, "Hey, don't do that thing," as if maybe it would change the trajectory. So
Yep, for sure.
we talked about a number of books. Is there any book or resource that you want to share that's had a significant impact on you?
So I think one of the big things that's changed my mindset quite a bit is the who not how thing,
Mhm.
right? The book, The Who Not How. That was
Love it.
such a simple book. And then you've got, that leads to things like, buy back your time. So there's other books on the same theme where it's, find the person who can get you to your goals the fastest you can. You don't have to learn and be an expert at everything, right?
Mhm.
You need to be able to get there and make things happen. So find that who, don't focus on how to do everything because you'll never get it done. And it's
Yeah.
changed my life completely. Now, I'm between you and me, you know what? I'm happy being the laziest guy on this earth and basically dishing out all my work to someone else, and I'd be the happiest guy, right? I used to be a control freak in the past. Now I'm like, you know what? I actually have a system. I just hired an executive assistant. And my system with the executive assistant is I'm going to put all my to dos. I use an app called Todoist. And I said, your job description is to make my life easier. And you're going to look at Todoist and tell me which of those tasks you can complete and by
Mm.
when. So I don't need to do it, right? So it's find the who, not how, because you want to make sure you're only doing the things that you value the most. So that's been a
Yes.
big impact for me.
Yeah, that's great. Did you find once you start taking those things off of your plate that the other things that you wanted to do, even if they were harder, actually got easier?
Yeah, because again, you clean up that headspace.
Yeah.
An interesting thing happened to me at this retreat I went to, right? I thought I was going to have all the time in the world to do some deep soul searching around vision in life and how the family and life and all the stuff is going to be. And I'm going to spend all this time with putting a vision together for our businesses and doing all this stuff. I cleared out my brain and I kind of felt like, the first couple days, it kind of got empty. It was like, there's no noise. It was like completely kind of blank. And when I actually put in the intentional work to think about certain topics, I didn't have to think so much to have the clarity. Normally, if I'm sitting at home and I've got 1,000 different things and I'm trying to think through and build a strategy, I'll call it in a certain area. Let's say it takes me, several hours to get through something done, right? To come up with this somewhat of a vision. What I found is when I cleared up that noise in the first couple of days of this silent meditation, because I wasn't surrounding myself with it, it only took me maybe a fraction of the time to have that clarity in the vision. And I got to the same point. It just took me way less time because I filtered out all the noise. And I'm like, I thought I was going to spend like 2 days thinking about the vision of our coaching program. The vision was clear within like a couple hours. I was like, oh, okay,
Wow.
I'm pretty clear on what I want to do here.
That's
Because
awesome.
you take out the noise and what's important truly surfaces and you're able to tackle and handle it.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah,
100%. Take out that noise. Absolutely.
absolutely.
Absolutely. What is one question or topic you wish I would have asked about, and how would you have answered the question or expanded on the topic?
Ooh. I wish you'd ask me what's the most important thing for me in my life.
What's the most important thing for you in your life?
My wife and my kids and the times I create with them, the memories I create with them. We love to travel the world. My kids are 9, 9, and 11 right now, and we've been to about 26 countries and 6 continents, and we love to do that. And I would absolutely continue to work on that, which is the actually what led us to going down this path of the freedoms and me kind of building this whole thing together.
Love it. As we close, what's one small step that someone can do today that's going to help them change their tomorrow?
Find the 3 people in your life who can help you take you to the next level of whatever dream you have, a dream, a vision, and look out in your network. Those people are around you right now. You just need to look. And if you could look and find those 3 people who could possibly help you elevate your life to the next level, do that today.
Well, Karan, as we close, how can people reach out to you, find you, and so forth?
So So the easiest way to reach out to me is probably personally is on Facebook. Is the easiest way, or yeah, that's probably it. It's the most popular platform I use. Our program's website is vacationrentalmastery.com. We're launching a podcast with the exact same name, Vacation Rental Mastery: Unlock Your Freedom, on March 15th is what I expect. And we're going to have a lot of these sort of conversations around freedoms and what people are doing to try and get there. In this, we've got a number of people we've interviewed in this process, and you can follow us there. And yeah, reach out to me. I usually have my information. I try to make myself as available as I can to anyone who wants to discuss any of this, because I do believe that one conversation can change someone's lives. If I can put this, sow this one seed of transformation in your life, this one conversation around freedoms, it could change someone's life. And I believe I need to be available to have that conversation. So social media is the easiest way. Find me on Facebook or follow us on Vacation Rental Mastery Podcast or vacationrentalmastery.com.
Perfect. 100%. I agree. One conversation can change the trajectory of anybody's life. You're just one away. You're
That's
just one
exactly
away.
right.
Well, thank you so much for the gift of your time. It's been an amazing conversation.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time as well.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, check out my website, personalcoachfinder.com, and find someone who can help. Remember, life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by choice. Take small steps today and make your life awesome, friends.